Now, one thing that helps protect against, which the other kinds of belts don't, is another type of puncture that you get called a pinch flat. Pinch flats come when you ride over, like you ride into a pothole and the tire goes into some narrow space that pinches the tire. And they call those snake bite punctures
Where
too.
it's pushed into the rim?
Well, it could be pushed into the rim, it could be pushed together. I mean, that's a good point. It may actually be the rim causing it, but it's basically comes from compression of the tire. Now, one thing that can guard against that is using a higher pressure tire. Actually, is better against resisting that kind of deformation. That sort of heavy belt in the tire has the same effect. It's so thick that the tire can't get pinched very easily. Another downside of that kind of tire is it can be more difficult to remove. It's just got a lot less flex to it. And that's one thing you'll find is the heavier duty the tire, I mean, it sounds good getting a heavy duty tire, it becomes a bigger chore to get the thing off and on the rim, which is why I brought these along. Now these are your standard ordinary garden variety tire levers. Of course, if you're ever changing a tire, you want to be using something like a tire lever. This classic rookie mistake is the screwdriver, which works, but it's the effect of the screwdriver is that the last thing that you do as you get the tire back onto the rim is it punches a new hole in the tube. So you want to use something like these that have rounded surfaces. Contours are actually made for prying tires on and off. These have the handy feature of the little hook on the end. If you pry the tire off the bead, that's the part of the rim that holds the tire, you can hook this down over the spoke and it holds it in place as you go to work with your other tire levers. Another recent innovation are these longer, heavy-duty nylon tire levers. These are actually styled after a steel tire lever, but having used the steel tire levers for a while, what I've found is since the rims are made out of aluminum, you wind up leaving marks and indentations in your rim by prying things off with the steel tire levers. So these are nice in that they're softer than the rim. If anything's going to get damaged, it's going to be the tire lever, not the rim. But it has a much longer lever arm, so if you're not that strong, if you don't have real big hands, and you've got this heavy-duty tank of a tire that you've got to get off, these are much easier to work with. But of course, they cost more than these, as you could have expected. Now, when you're prying a tire off, there's a few things to remember. And one thing, of course, with any of this mechanical stuff, I'm going to run this by you and it'll all get put in your head, but you only really learn it if you're sitting there doing it yourself. Which, as a plug, you're going to hear about the bicycle classes that the League of American Bicyclists designed. That's one of the things that they do, is you actually tear your tire off and pull the tube out, find the puncture, repair it, all that stuff. Which I will mention, finding the puncture is an important part of the process. You get a flat, well, you find the puncture, you want to find what punctured it too. I mean, if you got something that jabbed its way through the tire, it's probably still in the tire. So you don't just fix the tube, you actually want to find what caused it, and if you can't find what caused it, well, maybe it fell out, or maybe you just need to be a little bit worried and check your tire when you get home, and so that you don't get taken by surprise, because there may still be this thorn or piece of glass stuck in your tire. And then, of course, there's your patch kit and your pump. There's nice little portable pumps that they make now. There's portable pumps that are actually portable floor pumps, so that you actually are levering off the ground and you got a little hose that pumps up the tire. Much more ergonomic than working off of your wrists. There is also less of a danger of damaging your valve stem. And you know, so I was going to talk about this third way that you can get a flat, which is a failure at the valve. And there's no way of fixing a failure at the valve. You've simply got to have a replacement tube if you get a valve failure. One thing I found, they sell these double thick inner tubes, and they're heavy, but they're nice because they help resist punctures and they help resist pinch flats, but they seem to be plagued with cheap valves. I just sent a couple off to someone in Utah, and they put them on their bike, and the first thing that happened as they pumped it up was the valve simply came off. So I'm sending them another one, but that's something you got to watch out for. Of course, in that case, it failed right away, so it didn't wait till they were out on the road. But you do have to watch out for valve failures if you're locking up your bike. Of course, you're usually putting the lock through the wheel. Careful about putting it through the spokes right where the valve is. You can do it, but you don't want to be pulling it tight, because then you can smash down on the valve and break the valve. If you look at your wheel and you see that the valve is cockeyed in the hole, watch out, because that can damage your valve. You go riding on that, you go putting weight on it, the rim cuts into the edge of the valve. Now, one way of avoiding problems with the valve getting damaged is to get yourself an all-metal valve stem. There's two kinds of valves, two common kinds of valves. There's the Schrader valves, which most people have. That's what's on your car, and they tend to be used on wider tires like mountain bike tires. And then there's Presta valves, which they tend to come on the road bikes, the skinny tires, but you can also get wider tubes with the Presta valves. Pretty much all Presta valves are all metal, so that's a good thing about them. The Schrader valves have a lot more plastic in it. You can get all metal Schrader valves. You have to look around for them, but they're out there. And that saves you from the trouble of getting your valve damaged by any of these things. The metal valve stems are also nice because they have a little nut on them that you tighten the nut down on the valve stem and it holds it securely against the rim. So it's less likely, if your tube slides relative to your rim, then your valve is getting knocked out of place. If you've ever tried to pump up a flat tire or nearly flat tire, and you're trying to push your pump down onto the tube, and the tube is retreating into the tire, having a nut on the valve stem will protect against that as well. So I had intended to bring some examples of these, but you're out of luck. Fourth and last kind of damage to the tube you can get is difficult to catch. It comes from inside the rim itself. There is something that's put on the rim called a rim strip, which is basically a piece of plastic or cotton or something like that, which is there to protect the tube from the rim itself, which has all these little sharp corners on it and spokes sticking through it and the like. I have seen cases on new bikes where the manufacturer put on the wrong kind of rim strip. It was meant for low pressure tires, and then they went and put high pressure tires on it, and those fail almost immediately, so they're caught at the shop. But I've seen cases where somebody just built up a wheel and completely forgot to put a rim strip on it, and they made it a few blocks before the thing went flat. And something like that, it's difficult to guard against it because there's not really anything except the rim strip between the tube and the rim. But usually a problem like that is going to be evident right away. But you do want to be aware of your rim strip when you're changing out the tube. Take a look at it. If you see it folded over, if you see any parts of the rim exposed underneath it, fold it back. You don't want to knock it out of place because then you can make a problem for yourself. Okay? Okay, well, thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks, Mike.